Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about something very interesting I had to learn about recently, which is Slack bots, or to be more specific, multi-workspace Slack bots. Meaning, you can create a Slack bot which basically any user who logs into your application can connect their own Slack workspace onto your application, and depending on what you want to do, you can make them select a Slack channel and then maybe send a message or anything which is related to your application on that particular workspace for a particular user. To explain this better, I'll show you the demo of what we will actually build today. So this is what I had in mind. So basically the user will be able to sign in with your particular username with Google, and basically they will be able to connect their own Slack workspace here. So I go to connect Slack, I click on allow, and now this basically lists all my channels from this particular Slack workspace I had created just for testing the Slack bots. They will be able to select a channel which is one of these four, and say I select alert and go to alert over here. I don't have to go there, but just to show you, if I post test message here, show success, and if I go over here and just look at alert, it has sent a test message. So obviously this is a very basic use case for this, and you can build anything on top of this for this particular use case. For example, at the company I'm interning at, Helicon, we built this very recently for the alerts being triggered. So basically when you create an alert, you can select the Slack channels, connect the Slack workspace, and whenever an alert is triggered, you'll send you a message on your particular Slack channel. So I just mentioned that just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's build this out. So I already have a boilerplate which I'll put or a starter which I'll put in the description below, but basically let's run this, and this is what the boilerplate will look like. So I already have a basic sign-in with NextJS created over here. Yep, okay, that works. I just had to refresh a little bit to for the server to actually start off properly, and once I continue, I've actually logged in, and this is what I have right now. So just to go over the starter a bit, I will have the timestamp below where we actually start building out the Slack bot, so you can skip to that if you want, but I'll just go over what the starter has already. The starter is using NextJS Prisma with PostgreSQL on a local DB, and ShadCN UI with Tailwind CSS. So I'll just go over the first page is just a normal page with Tailwind CSS, and it has this sign button which is coming from my own components, which is just using a normal button using from ShadCN, and uses the sign in function. Then this basically redirects to the Slack. So once it redirects to /Slack, you can see that the Slack page is basically just a normal page which has a card and the Slack. And also that this has a very basic validation of if the user is authenticated or not. So this session getAuth session is a utility function I had created on my own, which basically just calls getServerSession from NextJS and passes in auth options, which is the auth options which we have for NextJS. You can go over this over here. The db.ts is a very starter boilerplate code for Prisma, and utils.ts cn is the function which is generated by ShadCN, which just uses TW merge along with CLSX library, and this absolute URL I'll be using somewhere. It basically just returns a URL if I call absolute URL with say /123. So this will basically return in this case http localhost 3000/123, because that is what I have in my .env. Let's remove this, but .env I have these two. The this over here. If I didn't have this, then also it caused that, because this is the in the case where this does not exist. But in your production application, what you can do is, in your .env, you can create this next public app URL env variable, and then it will take that. So if you have, say, app URL, if that was, say, https coven.me, then absolute URL 123 will generate this https this. So just to give you an idea what this function does, that was that. So let's start building this out already. So basically what I want to do first of all is be able to connect the Slack workspace for a particular user. So if I look at my schema, Prisma schema, I had already added the Slack access token column to my user over here. Because I had already connected this in my user before, I will just open Prisma Studio and remove the Slack access token from here. So that won't be connected anymore. Now what we can do is, for connecting the Slack workspace, over here we will first of all, in the card content, check if the particular user has a Slack access token already or not. Yep, so this is what we want. If the Slack access token does exist, that means Slack is already connected, else not connected. So now it should show not connected, and if it's not connected, we should be able to show a button over here. For that, I will actually create a not connected component inside Slack over here. So just go not connected. I'll actually zoom in. So over here we will have a const not connected, and let's export default not connected over here. So yeah, this should basically do that. Let's just do that just to test if this works, and this will auto import from /not connected. Yep, so that works. This will basically return a button which will say connect Slack, and we can import button from our Shadcn components. So this will say connect Slack. Now just to give you an idea of how this works, let's go to install with auth inside the Slack API documentation. So this is long documentation here, you can read through this. Basically how it works is, first of all, you call an authorize URL. Now this authorize URL, you send in the scopes which you want. The scopes basically mean that the token which this returns back, when you use that token, you can access certain parts of the API. For example, if you pass in a scope like chat :write. Now chat :write basically means that you can send chat messages, or channels :read. That means that you can read the channels or list the channels. So those are the scopes which you pass into the your API. You pass in the client ID. I'll tell you how to get that right now. So once you call this API and pass in a redirect URL to this will go back to the redirect URL you pass into this. So say you pass into this localhost 3000 /slack/callback. So it goes back to /callback, and in that now it returns back a code. Now you take that code, you take that code and you pass in that code to this API now, which is API over.b2.access. Now what this does is it returns back something called an access token. You pass in the client ID, code, the client secret. It returns back this access token over here. Now what this access token does is it gives you access to the data of that particular workspace. Now what we want to do is store this access token for that particular user, and whenever we make a request particular to that workspace, we pass in this access token and get back the data which we want, or send a message accordingly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get into this. So like it says over here, we need to actually make this a link. So over here, let's make this an as child, and let's make this a link over here. A href. Okay, let's have this like that. So actually, yeah. So how do we generate the Slack URL over here? So we can see that it's very similar over here. So let's have a constant Slack URL. Remember, we want to pass in the scopes. I'll actually copy the scopes. So these are the scopes which we need. We need channels read, groups read, chat write.public. I'll just go over what these do. Channels read is to list the channels. Groups read is basically to list the private channels which the bot is not a part of in that particular workspace. Chat write is to write a message to a channel which the bot is a part of, and chat write.public basically to send a message to a channel which the bot is not a part of. And the client ID, we want to actually get this. So we go to Slack API apps, applications over here, api.slack.com/apps. Go over here, create a new app from scratch, name it whatever we want. I'll name it MW Slackbot YT. And I will use livecode 247 as the workspace I will develop this app in, and click on create app. So we need this client ID. So we will say Slack _ client _ ID, and we need the client secret over here. Click on show, copy that, go Slack client secret and paste that in. Once that is done, you can go to not connected, and over here, instead of client ID passing in like this, we can make this a string and then pass in process.env.slack client ID. Remember, we also need to pass in a redirect URL, which it cursor basically tries to autocomplete for me, but this is kind of what I want, but not really. I'll tell you why. Now, when we go to OAuth and permissions over here, you basically need to add an authorized list of redirect URLs which you want the which you want Slack to basically redirect to. In this case, say we go to Slack/callback, and say we try to add http localhost 3000 Slack/callback. See how it says please use HTTPS. Now the problem is that when you are developing in your local host, you have an HTTP protocol. You don't have the SSL certificate yet. So what you want to do is, this is a very nice little trick I just found out. There's this website called redirectme2.com. Now whatever you pass in after this, say https covin.me, or let's just go to our thing, localhost 3000/stripe. This basically just takes this off and then redirects you to this application, right? So this is what we wanted, right? Or Slack, actually, I don't know why I wrote Stripe, but that's kind of what we want, right? That's pretty neat. So what we want to do over here is Slack redirect URI. We will call absolute URL with this, yes, but over here, instead of passing in let's remove this. Instead of passing in Slack redirect URI just like that, we will actually check if it starts with, okay, I hate that this is doing this. Let me try to get this over here. Okay, let me just zoom out a bit just for this case, and I'll zoom in back. If it starts with http:// then we send in this with redirectme2.com before. Oh my goodness. Okay, just like that. Else, I just pass in Slack redirect. Okay, yeah, I messed this up a bit because of this, but yeah, just like that. This stops over here, and over here we pass in this. Okay, that should be fine, except it is not because of that. Okay, so basically just what we discussed, we're checking if Slack redirect URL starts with HTTP, then we redirect me to this, else just pass in the Slack redirect URL as it is. So we can pass this over here, Slack URL. Now when we go back to our application, actually we want to add this over here, so we just go redirect me to.com/ and then click on add, click on save URLs. When we go over here, try to refresh once, and let me just open the inspect element and look at this URL for a bit. Let's copy, or oh, isn't there an edit attribute? Yeah, okay, let's try editing this attribute. Let me just open this over here. So we pass in the scopes which we want and client ID, and look at this is what I was talking about. We have the redirect URL with redirect me to.com/ this. So now, oh, there's one more step by the way. In your bot token scopes, you want to add the scopes which we required. We wanted channels read, we wanted groups read, we wanted chat write, and we wanted chat write dot public. So let's just refresh once just in case. We don't need to refresh, but that's fine. Now click on connect Slack, click on allow, and it comes back to Slack/callback with the code which we need. Now the next step, we get back this code, and you need to pass in this code to the or.v2.access API. So let's do that now. Remember, we're sending back to Slack/callback, so we need that page over here. So over here, let's just create Slack/callback/page.tsx. So here what I want to do is create the Slack callback page, and here I actually want to check if this is obviously if the user is first of all logged in or not. So we do the same thing again. This needs to be an asynchronous component. So if session does not exist, we redirect to /. This does not come from here. Else we find the user from the database. If now user does not exist, then also we want to redirect. Then we want to not this, but basically here what we want to do is get the code from the search parameters. The way you do that is get search params, and then the type of search params would be search params. It will be an object with a code which will be a string. Now that code is this code over here. So if code does exist, then we want to do what we're going to do here. So here basically what we want to do is make a fetch request to or.v2.access API. So we'll just go const response await fetch slack.com/API or.v2.access. Now notice over here in the API which we were seeing here, documentation, this API endpoint, let's just look at this. We need to make a post request, and this is the interesting here. The content type needs to be application form URL encoded. So you can't send in a JSON with this data. So what you want to do is over here, just set your method to post, and then in the body just do new. Actually before this, let's have a header section with the content type to be application xwww form URL encoded, and then the body would be a new URL search params, and you pass in an object with the client ID, which is process.env.slack client ID, with the client secret as this, and obviously this needs to be null safe just because we need to pass in a string over here. And then we send in the code. We have the code over here. Oh, we do need to get the code from search params, and then yeah, so this should work. Yeah, let's just get back the data from response.json. Now if the data gives back something called an OK parameter. Now if it is OK, then we want to call db.user.update, where the id is user.id, and we need to send back data with the Slack access token to be data.access token. Data is the data which is coming back here, and we saw that this the response here, example responses, this sends back this access token. Also, let's see this here, alternate response with a typical error. It sends back this error. So what we want to do over here is, in case data is not okay, okay, before that, yeah, let's do this, and then let's return redirect to Slack. In an ideal world, you will actually have a try catch over here and check for that too, but I wanted this to be a very basic app, not much going ahead with the actual error handling here, but you should actually do that. And then, since we have returned out of this already and out of this if statement, we'll just console.error the data.error. Now if all that is fine, if code does not exist, then we have another else case here, console.error no code provided. Okay, so now that is done, what you can do is over here, you can just have this saying there was an error connecting to Slack, please contact support. Okay, so yeah, so that should work already. And see how because of hot reload it already actually logged in for me. But basically what I wanted to do here is, let's try calling callback with a code which is very random, and this should not work, right? So it says this, and if I look at my console, oh sorry, it's a server error. It sends back this invalid underscore code in my error log. So that works pretty well. Just to show you this again, let's go to Prisma Studio. Let's refresh this and then remove the Slack access token. Save the change, refresh over here. Let's try doing this again. Click on connect Slack, click on allow, and you connected. And like we see in our Prisma, we have the Slack access token over here with the access token which we need to send back in each and every request now. Now, the next step. We saw in the application before, we had a select field with the channels list. So that's what we want to do over here. So basically, let's just close all the tabs. In Slack/page.tsx, we had this check for Slack access token. Now we do this part, which is connected. So we change this, I'll have a connected component over here. Let's have a const connected and export that and import that here. Now this basically needs to be a form with the select field. Now I'll use the NextJS 14 form way to do this, or with the server actions. So this needs to be a client file, and here let's return a form. Let's fill in the action later, but here I need the select from components. Oh, by the way, I have already installed the Shadcn components in here beforehand. So yep, that's that. That's why I have the select over here. So over here, let's set a name to say channel ID. Let's import this. Remember to import this from components and not radix UI. That's very annoying if that happens. Then you get select trigger, which is basically what is shown for the first one. So select a channel. Yeah, see how I did that? That wasn't even intentional. and select value from components. Then you have select content, and you need to map through the channels over here. Now for that, what I'm going to do is right over here, actually before that, let me just put in some dummy data here and show this on the screen. Yep, so we have this over here. Now we need to query the channels over here. For that, we will use an API which Slack gives, which is conversations.list. So we look at conversations.list. We need to make a GET request to this API and just go down and see how they say token. Now this is the access token which we got. There are two ways to pass this to the API. You pass this as an HTTP authorization header or as a post parameter, which is basically your JSON body. But in a GET request, at least, it becomes very annoying to do it with the post request way. And this is a very standard auth practice to send it with the authorization header. So we will be doing that. So basically what you want to do is, let's get the channels over here. And let me actually make a function over here with this get Slack channels. We don't need to pass in the access token here, but I think it's a good point to actually make an actions folder over here. So here, let's remember actions folder, it needs to be use server file, and let's have a const or export const get Slack channels. Yeah. Now let's do the same thing over here. Let's check if logged in. We get the if session does not exist, we return an empty list. Basically, we want to return a promise with Slack channel. We'll make this type over here. Type Slack channel. This basically, if you look at this over here, the example responses, this sends back the channels. It sends back a lot of data, but all we need is the ID and the name. So we say ID string and name string. So that is what we're returning back here. So this should be fine, and we import DB. Now, if user does not exist, we send back an empty list. Now next, if all this is fine, we send a fetch request to slack.com/api/conversations.list. This needs to be a GET request, so that is fine. Now in the headers, we send an authorization, and over here we send a bearer. This is the way to do to authorization, and here we send in the Slack access token. Now obviously, if the Slack access token does not exist in the user, this will just send nothing, and anyways the Slack API would give an error, so we don't need to check if this exists or not. Now actually this is all we need to do. You can actually send in a limit over here. By default, I think this is 100, so you can, and the maximum it is 1000, like the maximum data you can send. So we'll put in 1000 over there. You can also have pagination on this channels listing, but I'll just leave it at this for now. In case you might have users who have more than 1000 channels in their Slack workspace, you can have pagination on top of this. So we get back the data. Again, this does the same thing with the errors or example responses. This sends back an OK. So if not data.ok, we can actually console.error data.error here and return. So yeah, I guess we could return data.channels. Yeah. Yeah, this should be fine. Now let's save this and let's import get Slack channels here. Let's just console.log out the channels over here. Let's refresh once. Let's see what's the issue here. let's just oh wait, this would, yeah, okay. I keep messing this up however much I use NextJS 13, but okay, this was logging in the server. That's why this is logging in the server. It sends back all these channels which I have with the ID, name, and all this data which we don't need, but we do have that. Now since we have that, we can pass that into the connected component. So let's have channels like that, and in connected let's have interface connected props and have channels Slack channel, and we actually should export this type over here so that we can use the same type in both places. App, okay, I guess, yeah. Oh yeah, over here let's just get channels and then connected props, and over here instead of doing this, let's just map through the channels and then have a select item with the key as the channel ID, value as the channel ID, and over here we'll have channel.name, and that should be it. Why is this giving me an error over here? Oh, we need one more bracket. Yeah, let's go back now. Yeah, this gives back. Oh, let's just save this page as well, and we have the 4 Slack channels which we need. Amazing. So we have made a lot of progress already. We're almost there. Now in our connected form, we want this action to actually, okay, so we need a button over here which says send message, send test message, I guess, and let's import this over here. Yeah, and then I guess just cause it's annoying me because there's no gap there, let's do that. Okay, so when we click on send test message over here, this should make an API call to chat.post message. So let's look at this documentation over here. So we need to make a post request to slack.com/API/chat.post message, and then we need to send the token, we need to send the channel, and we need to send one of these 3. Now we will be sending text here just for simplicity. We'll just send hello world and get done with it, but I do recommend looking at the blocks over here, and there's something called a block kit over here which you should look at if you're making more complicated structures of messages. Like you have lists in your application, quotes in your application. I do recommend looking at that, and in this case we'll just send normal text and get done with it for now. So what we want to do here is make an API call to this, and I guess let's just go to actions/Slack and make another function over here, const send test message. I export const, and yeah, let's actually get the channel ID. No, actually we need the form data over here. Yeah, so that we should pass that in over here, send test message. Now actually in an actual application you should be doing something like this: status form data, use form state, not status, state, state, and then state, and then send test message here and then null. And you probably want to have state and action over here, and then use the state for error messages. But in this case I wouldn't be doing too much error validation over here, but you should do that in your application. So we'll just send test message just like that for now. Over here again we do the same thing. At one point you can actually refactor this out and have like a check function or something, and then if not, use a return. Now we get the channel ID from data channel ID, and if channel ID does not exist, we return. Again, if we are using use form state, we can actually send back an error, but that's fine for now. Now we make a fetch call to slack.com/API/chat.post message, make a post request, send in the header with the authorization token, bearer, and then send back Slack access token, and then body we have a json.stringify, with the channel as the channel ID, which is coming from here, and we need to send a text. So we just send hello world testing multi-workspace Slack bot, and send in the body over here. We close this. I hate how much this auto completes for a YouTube video, but a pretty good editor. So we get the data by awaiting response.json. If data is not okay, we get a console.error the error. We can actually return nothing over here, and then we just return. I guess this is fine for now, but yeah, you probably want like a proper feedback to come back, but this is fine for now. This actually should work already, so let's see. Let's open our slack.com in a split view. Yep, I guess let's just send a message to social, send test message. Of course it didn't work on the first try. Okay, it says invalid arguments. Let's see why. So we're sending in the channel and we're sending in text over here. Where's the thing? So we're sending a channel, sending a post request. Oh, do we need this? Oh, this would be very stupid. Refresh here. Social, send test message, and it works. Oh damn. Okay, we needed a content type application JSON. It's not super now that I think of it, but yeah. So we've made a very basic application here, and it works very well. You could log in with different users over here as well and connect the user, but for that you actually need to deploy this first. Then you need to go to manage distribution in the API app, the Slack apps. Go down, click on this, and click on activate public distribution. The problem is it does not work right now because my OAuth and permissions, the redirect URI has a localhost URL. For some reason it still does not allow this even after this. But yeah, you need to have a proper custom domain over here and then deploy this and then try it out with that. But yeah, this will still work. You can connect different workspaces and send a message from that, and that will still work. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it, and I will try to be coming with more such content, and hopefully you learned something new from this video. So stay tuned, keep watching, like, share and subscribe, and thank you.